a soldier's tale begins. We left for foreign shores in the name of freedom, comrades in arms for the liberty of man. Shoulder to shoulder, but still could not redeem them in God's name, but no one could understand.
Hello and welcome to the Late Night Veterans Show, episode 78. We're live here in Berlin at the Berlin Wall. So we're going to bring on our first guest, special guest, which is Joseph Schrock. He's going to say a prayer at the start of the show, and then we're going to bring on Squaddie Box and we'll get to know more about them. I'm your Chief Executive Officer of the show, Darren Edmundson, with your co-hosts Gareth, Venables and Adam Scarborough. Please like, share and subscribe live from Germany in Berlin, guys. Thank you. So guys, welcome to the show, episode 78. We're going to hand you over now to Joseph, but we met in Berlin. We are live from Berlin in Germany, guys, and we met Joseph last night at Brandenburg Gate. So Joseph, if you would welcome to the show, your first time on the show. It was a pleasure to meet you last night. Could you please open the show with a prayer, if you wouldn't mind? Over to you.
Yes, I would be honored.
Go
Jesus, thank you for this evening. Thank you, Lord, for each and every one of these precious people that are on the call here tonight. Jesus, I pray, Lord, that you would be the one that gives revelation. Lord, that you would even just tonight, Lord, through the methods that you've given us, whatever Squaddie wants to talk about, Lord, that you would give him the words to speak. Lord, I pray that it would touch the hearts of the men and the women that are listening, that have sacrificed their bodies and sacrificed so much to be on the front lines. Jesus, I pray even right now that your Holy Spirit would begin to touch people right now and do deep works of healing in their hearts and in their minds, Lord, where nothing else can touch, that you would just initiate that right now, that you would just touch people right now. We give this call over to you, Jesus. We pray that you would do your work of healing and do your work of ministry on this call. I pray that if they don't know you, that they would come to know you, Jesus, and not just the death of your cross, but the power of your resurrection, Jesus. That they would trust in you, Jesus, and believe in you. Lord, I pray that they would know you, but I pray that they would find healing and find purpose and find destiny. I pray that your perfect will would be done on this call tonight. In Jesus' mighty name, amen.
Joseph, thank you so much for that prayer, and welcome to the show, mate. If you wouldn't mind knocking off, and then I can introduce Squaddie Box. Just shut your app down. Thank you so much. I will give you a ring after the show, Joseph.
Yes.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Sounds good.
Honor to have you on.
Yep.
Thank you, Joseph.
Thank you so much. God bless you guys. Bye-bye.
So guys, we're here with myself, Darren Edmundson, co-host Gareth Venables, and Adam Scarborough, which is our co-host. He's doing extremely well. He's been with us for a couple of months now, but I've known Adam for a long time. Gareth, I'm going to put you on the spot here. You can welcome Squaddie Box, and Dean is the Chief Executive Officer. Go.
Hiya, Dean. Hiya, Squaddie Box. So we're live in Berlin. This is the Brandenburg Gate behind us. It is the gate between the east and the west of Germany. Berlin Wall used to run through it. But I'd like to introduce Squaddie Box. So, Squaddie Box, can you just give us a quick few minutes of who you are and what you're about, please?
Well, thank you very much, gents. So, Squaddie Box, in essence, is a connection for homeless veterans to get back into society. I'm Dean, CEO. I started Squaddie Box. We started Squaddie Box back in July 2025. I'll do a bit more about that, but I'll just hand you around the team. So just introduce yourselves for a minute. Please introduce yourself, mate.
I'm Martin.
What do you do, Martin?
All right, have a good time. Right. Okay. Well, I do training and development. So I've got a course we called VISP, which is Veterans Identification
Support
program. Yeah, and it's all right. I've been a long day. I've been up all night, and that's now with Highfield. So it tells civilians how to and officers how to identify military personnel, things like that. Hey? Yeah, so I do all the training side and the development bits. Nick?
Yeah, so I'm Nick. I look after all of the strategic partnerships, trying to grow the business and get people to understand and donate and help where they can.
Jodie?
Oh, Nick does way more than that. He's selling himself short. I'm Jodie. I have been known Dean for a long time, so we've got a bit of background, and we sort of tag team. So if there's any kind of field to be going on, bit of patter, that's Dean and I working as a team. We both love to do the whole patter. So yeah, that's my bag really. Talking to people. I can talk a lot, so it's probably best I put my mic off in a minute.
I'm Adam. They do a lot more than what they say, I can assure you. Yeah.
I'm Adam Scarborough. Darren kindly gave me the chance to be co-host of Late Night Veteran Show, which I took up. And I served in the British Army from 81 to 84 in the REME. And when I left that, I trained as a registered mental nurse, which I'm still on the nursing register. And I find that with all the PTSD and the psychological traumas that soldiers are going through, some of the experience I've had over the years in jails and working in trauma unit, which I did 10 years ago, is very relevant to the Late Night Veteran Show. So I'm trying to offer my help there as well, which I'll do a talk later on. Yeah, thanks. Great to be here. And thanks for all you do, Darren, yeah, and others.
Yeah, no problem, guys. Thanks for that introduction, guys. That was absolutely brilliant. Gareth's got a couple of questions. He's going to ask you, Dean, as the Chief Executive Officer. If any of you other guys in the meantime have got anything that you haven't added and you wanted to say, just jump in, put your hand up, and Gareth will allow you to talk. Gareth, fire away.
So the first question then is, how many veterans do you think that you've helped since you've established? Roughly, if you know the exact.
So we've only been going since July last year. One of the key problems we've had is actually finding them. We've estimated somewhere between 4,500 to 6,000 homeless veterans. We've helped about 4 or 5 so far in that short period of time. We helped 2 within the first 2 weeks of setting up. We are reverse that question slightly. We keep being so when we go to councils and people, they say, "Oh, we want to put a Squaddie Box in a certain place," and we say that's great, but we need to find the veterans first. So lots of people want to help us do what we want to do, but we need to put those boxes in the appropriate place. So if that helps.
Cool. Thank you very much. Second question then is, if I was a veteran and I was homeless, how do I approach? What's the channels? How do I get involved? How do I make contact and ask for help?
Okay. So either through our website, give us a call, send us an email, through the councils, through any other third-party organisation that are aware of us and could be signposted. Service is completely free to any veteran or blue light service because we cover blue light as well.
Cool. So with that, obviously, it could be a problem that they don't have those connections. They don't have a phone. They don't have jobs. Do you actually reach out towards? Do you have like an outreach outwards kind of way? Or I think Jodie's quite happy.
Say again.
I'll just butt in for a second there, Dean. Yeah, one of the things we're really looking for is partnerships with charities, and Dean's done a lot of work to get in touch with charities because that's often the first
Jodie, do you have a question?
Call for people. But yeah, it's I completely appreciate it. One of the things we've really considered is the fact that, you know, if you're homeless, have you got a phone? Do you have access to the internet? Do you really want to go into a library and put your life out there on the big blue web, you know, World Wide Web? So yeah, it's really trying to we're trying to maximise every opportunity that allows a veteran or a blue light to access what we can actually give them.
Okay, thank you. So if any family members or friends know of a homeless veteran, can they contact you on behalf of individuals? They have a phone.
Yep. Anybody. Yep.
I'm assuming that's all going to be shared.
The more the merrier. The wider the reach, the better.
Yeah. Thank you.
Just a quick question. How long have you been going for?
We only set up in
you've
July.
already said that. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. July last year. Yeah.
Yes. Sorry, we've got all the hustle and bustle around us, and it's
No,
something.
it's fine.
So we are in the process of setting up PTSD camp in Pembrokeshire, which is going to be free for veterans and families.
Yeah.
That's not put in place yet, but that's our plan. We're also hoping to open one in America and Canada. We've got the American team sorting that side out and the Canada team. It's a long process. So if we have people come to us in the meantime, could we forward them on to you? Would that be okay?
Absolutely, yeah. What we're trying to do is, it depends on where they are, is trying to establish a connection with their local councils. And then what we're trying to do is get a process going where the councils take some responsibility for it, because they are legally bound to, and under the Armed Forces Covenant as well. So that way then we can then have the boxes appropriately deployed in the local areas. Nick's been doing some work with private organisations as well, getting them to sponsor boxes. He's working on some. Did you want to mention something around that, Nick?
Yeah, it's one of those really difficult situations where if you've got the chicken and egg situation. If you don't know where the homeless veterans are, you can't reach out to them, and you can't then connect with them, so you can't give them that. So that, this information is really key. And getting private companies, defense companies to sponsor us as well is also great for them, because it comes under their Armed Forces Covenant and they can use that in their social value as well. So, reaching out to these private companies and also the defense primes and other defense companies, it is something that's key to be able to give back to stuff that they're doing as well, and that we're doing at the same time.
Okay, thank you. Just one more question then. So if I could just probably pass this to... I'll go with the CEO, actually. What inspired you to help homeless veterans? Why specifically that?
Here's the story. The guys are all laughing because they've heard it countless times. I was quite ill, 24. I won't go into what was up with me, but I was quite really ill. And I was helping. I was basically got signposted to be a veteran, homeless veteran in West Sussex. He couldn't get PIP. The reason he couldn't get PIP is because he had no address. And we went through all the different processes to try and understand how we could deal with that. And all these so-called processes that are allegedly available, none of them actually really worked. There was always a barrier for some reason why it wouldn't work. So I did a massive amount of research and realised actually there isn't nothing out there. There is no proper process that they could use to actually get the mail sent to them. And people said, PO boxes, DWP, all these sort of things, but they're all forwarding addresses. And if you haven't got an address in the first place, where did you forward it to? So it made no sense. So it was born of that, really.
You haven't got a bank account, right?
No, and GP surgeries and all those other things. I had a conversation today with a veteran who runs a security company, and he wants to train veterans to do SIA badge, but he says that if they ain't got an address, I can't get the badge sent to the address. So we're going to work with them they're going to sponsor a box. And if they get any homeless veterans, then they're going to have a box where that can be sent to that address, and they can get the badge, and it means they can get work and then get back in the system again. So it's things like that.
Trying to get back into the system, isn't it? That's the problem. You've got no bank account, you've got no address, your driving license. I mean, everything just expired.
I will say to that is the veterans. Some of the veterans we are speaking to, when we say back into the system, that doesn't mean they necessarily want a house. Some of the guys are very happy staying in the vans, the camper vans, their tents, whatever they're doing. But it's about that actual communication reconnection that they need, which means they can travel around wherever they want, but people can still get hold of them, and they can still access the services and the money and whatever else they need. That's one of the key things that we're developing.
So a couple of follow-up questions from that. When I left, I found it very difficult to organised and stuff. I was social working for about 6 months, and I was on the bronze list for my local council.
Yeah.
I was mentally unwell. They took me like 3 years ago. And I struggled. Without my family, I'd have been stopped. So I think the issue I've identified, maybe you agree or not, just let us know if you do. The transition away from the military is quite difficult. Obviously, with a med discharge, I don't think it's fit for purpose. I think that the military should do a lot more to support their soldiers when they leave. Give, like somewhere to call them first, somewhere to go, and I can see that Jodie's got her hand up. So Jodie, if you want to jump in.
Yeah, we fully support that. We fully agree with you there. What we're really trying to do is bridge that gap between the lack of knowledge, really, when somebody comes out of what is already a system, then try and enter into a brand new system that they possibly haven't been part of for many years. And as Dean was saying, it's not about physically finding a home for somebody, because there are charities out there that do that. But for some people, for many people, it would seem we're just struggling to locate and get our hands on these people in the nicest possible way. It is actually offering something that just bridges that gap. It just gives a little bit of dignity to somebody who doesn't want to say, yeah, I'm homeless, and no, I'm actually quite happy living in my tent. I'm actually quite happy sofa surfing. I'm quite happy what I'm doing. Or no, I need a little bit more help, a little bit more support. But what I really need is an address, because I can't get that support without seeing my GP first, and I can't see my GP without an address. So is that bridging that gap?
But further to that as well, if a veteran comes out and retires and they're entitled to a pension, if they don't have an address, they can't get any of their pension information and anything like that, so they become detached. It is key to work with the organisations as well, like the police, the councils, and also the NHS, to be able to then close that loop and hopefully help the veterans get an address which allows them to get all of that information, and then allows them to move on where they want to move on. It's not up to us to say, this is how you should move on. They have an address. They can move on how they want to then.
Nick, do you want to mention the transition side we spoke about?
Sorry, you'll have to remind me, Dean. Sorry, my brain's...
When we went to Chatham, remember they were talking about transition?
Yeah, there's some conversations about how does the MOD, I'm ex-Royal Engineers, 25 years, started when I was 16, retired at 40. I was completely institutionalized. I still set all the clocks 5 minutes fast and drive my wife nuts, completely, with my slight foibles. So I think it is really important that the military has to, and I think Johnny Mercer had the right idea, and the veterans department and such like was folded up because I don't think they liked what he was saying. It's from what I can see. We don't do enough in transition to help our people out. I worked up to the day I left, and when I left, I'd done no resettlement courses or anything like that. No PTSD assessments, nothing. And I think people at the MOD, the Royal Engineers have recognised that there needs to be more help on transition.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Yeah. So, like for myself, I did leave with a diagnosis of PTSD. I did leave with actual poor mental health. Even when you're diagnosed or you're under counselling, it just stopped. It completely stopped, and then you're on your own. Like without my family, without the support around me, some people don't have family. Some people join you to get away from you. Some people are strangers.
Yeah,
and I think the other real interesting thing is that when we leave, I did 25 years. All of my medical documents were then locked up in Glasgow. None of that information went to my GP. I then had to make a freedom of information request to get that information to give it. But that should be, again, an automatic transition. Everything should go to the area that there's your documents. Thank you very much. Take those to your GP. You then have a full history. I'm going to use the word almost abandoned. Once you hand in your ID card, you're done.
Yeah. And we've been approached as well with, was the engineers again, wasn't it? Whereby they asked us about doing transition boxes. So things like the old compulsory drug testing. It was if somebody does a CDT and they're out. What are they going to do? They've got no address. If they've been living in the block or whatever, that's it. End X. They're out the system. Or when you've got people living in the block and they're getting out, some of them still don't have an address to go to. And we always ask, can we do a transition box for them, so we can sort of gradually break them into Civvie Street, which is bizarre in a way. Was like, really, but actually when you look at it, you can see the reality of it.
Yeah, I've had some conversations with the RSM up at the infantry battalion near where I live, and he's really interested in the fact that we possibly could provide a transition box. So it's a Squaddie Box, exactly the same, but it gives them that few months, because a lot of us, when we come out, you don't actually know where you're going to go, unless you're married with two kids and you've lived off base, and you're sort of like, well, that's where I'm going to be next month and month after. A lot of the other guys and girls as well, they come out. I've no idea where I'm going to go. I'm going to go to my aunties. I'm going to my mates. I'm going to. So they can't move forward quick enough. Now we give them a transition box, and they can start moving forward. They know that their mail is going to that particular place. They go and pick it up while they're moving from the military mindset to the civilian mindset.
Yeah,
I think.
But then we are.
Sorry, I was just going to say to further that, the idea of the transition box is that it gives them a permanent address in the area that they are considering going to live in. So if you want to register for a GP, you have a permanent address that you can register to. If you want to register with a school, you have a place that you can give as your home address. Then once you get your accommodation, a flat or a house or whatever, you can then transfer all of that information to your home address. So it gives them that bridge between service and permanence, and that's what they're sort of looking for, is how we can help do that.
Yeah.
So from my understanding, then, obviously I've not heard a Squaddie Box till today, till Darren mentioned it. Would you say that the system are failing our soldiers? Because, like, even when I left the PTSD, and I was due to get my pension, I was due to get a lump sum.
I personally think
they'll have lump sum. I didn't know until I was out, and I was like supposed to know 6 weeks in advance. I didn't have a clue. They didn't. Glasgow just did not, or were unable to give me any facts. The only time I knew what I was getting when I got it. Well, that was to me.
Yep.
I couldn't plan ahead. So do you feel that the system is that people that serve between the country and feel like the system letting down that system?
I think you're right. I think.
Oh, it's for Dean, sorry. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go.
Yeah, no, carry on, Dean.
Yeah.
Sorry, I lost half of that.
So system's letting us down.
Actually, it's just like prisoners.
Yeah, we said that.
Right,
Yeah.
you walk out. The guards take your bag, give you your bits and pieces, stick you on the other side of the fence, go off you trot.
Yeah.
And that's what the MOD does to us.
And joking
we
apart,
treat our soldiers like prisoners, then, right?
It's like that. When I left in 2000, and literally when I did the so-called CTP back then, they said to me we were entitled to the same benefits as prisoners. They were the exact words they said to me back then. And I'd tell you what, I don't think it's changed that much, to be honest. We are.
It feels like it when you get abandoned, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
So I do have another question.
Well,
the other way around. So civilians are just going to look at it and go, "Why do you need help? We don't get it. So why don't you just stand on your own 2 feet?" So what would you say to those
But
individuals that come across?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting way to put it. I personally think the MOD do just. I don't think the transition system is particularly good, and I don't think the look after care is particularly good. Flipping it on its head as you've just done, yeah, you're right. I think, but what they don't realise is that because you are in an institution, for all intents and purposes, it is an intents and purposes. You are, I joined at 16 and a half. What did I know about civilian life and how civilian life and how I lived in the block, then I got a quarter. Once I retired, I had to buy my own house. I had to find my own way. It is really difficult if you have never lived in that environment. And I think that's where the problem is understanding the environment that you're going into. If we were going on to ops, we would be briefed on the environment inside and out. We would train in that environment, blah, blah, blah. We don't get it when we retire or leave.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, so in my personal opinion, again, I think that we get... I think that we get trained very well for ops. We get trained very well to do the job. What happens when you leave? Like, that aggression meets aggression doesn't work. It just doesn't work. So we should retrain or de-train.
I think the other thing is,
I can see that Jodie keeps putting her hand up as well. So, Jodie,
Sorry, Martin. I'm going to let Martin speak in a second. But I am a civilian. I don't come from a military background. I do live with a gentleman in the reserved armed forces. But from a civilian point of view, I think if I heard somebody saying, "Well, why should you get it? We don't get it." Well, no, you do, because you're actually already in the system. What we're talking about is people here that are walking, as you say, out of an institution. They're not already in the system. They don't already know how it works. They haven't actually had that intrinsic learning on that for the last 20 years of their life. What they've actually been learning is how to serve, how to do a completely different skill set. And you're then literally, as you've all said, abandoned. So to say, for a civilian to say, why should you get this help? We don't get it. Yes, you do. You've already been having it for the last however many years. You just didn't realise it because you're already in the system.
I mean, the military is effectively an institution that does the job for the country.
I think the other thing is that if they want us all to rejoin up to 65, they need to start looking after us now.
Exactly that. Yeah.
And if
They're going to have to come and find me in Berlin first.
Yeah.
Not a chance. I wouldn't go back in. Not a chance.
So I've got another question. I put it up on the screen. What does a typical day look like for veterans staying with you?
Well, the interesting thing is they're not staying with us.
Okay.
They are wherever they are. There's no transition from where they're. So, for example, if a veteran in Portsmouth is living in a camper van in Portsmouth, a Squaddie Box will be deployed to Portsmouth. His normal day will carry on. The only bonus for him is he now has a fixed address, which means he's got more stability.
Yeah,
so
I'm with you.
The idea is not to change what he's got; it's to make it better. Yeah,
which will give him more stability.
Yeah.
We are intent. We like. We can live out the back of a tent. We can live out the back of a vehicle. We can live, on a roundabout, a busy roundabout in a tent, hunkered down. Nobody would know we were there. And you can walk to the train station, open your Squaddie Box post box, take your post out, lock it up, go back to your tent, do whatever you need to do. As we say, it's about them making the transition, not us forcing them to make that transition. They can then make up the mind what they want to do with their life and how they want to do it with our support. But it gives them the link to the NHS, it gives them the link to social, it gives them the link to bank accounts, it gives them a link to pensions. Whatever they want their link to be, they can grow. Phone, whatever, can grow their links and their social standing as big or small as they want.
Self-empowerment is the word.
Yeah.
So they're self-empowered to do whatever they need to do, without someone putting a rod on a big stick at them. I mean, a lot of the guys and girls that are out there don't want every man and his dog knowing what they're up to or where they're going. You know, I've had a house and all these rest of it. I still don't want everybody knowing exactly what I'm up to, but that's part of being military. So, yeah. So you always like that ability to be able to go, I'm here, but I might not be.
The phrase we tend to use a lot. Sorry, the phrase we tend to use a lot is self-enabler.
Absolutely, yeah, of course, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
coming under the cloud of medical discharge, you don't want that to be public view. You know, I was going through a rough part of my life. I don't want to know about that. You kind of hide away from the system, hide away from
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all about maintaining your dignity, your privacy, and actually, I think for self-enabling, it's about the veteran actually owning what's happening to them rather than somebody else doing it to them. But at the same time, giving that support system that facilitates it, not just deserting them, as so many people probably feel they have been.
Perfect. Yeah, I totally agree. So, like the old saying is, you can take the horse to the water, right? But the horse doesn't want to drink water. It's not going to do it. And I think everyone's transitions differently at different times, rates.
Yep.
Just have one more question. So, if I'm a member of the public and I want to help or get involved, how?
If you go onto our website, there are multiple ways that people can donate. If you work for an organisation like a council or a corporate or something like that, and you want to have a conversation with us about being a sponsor, reach out to us. Nick will have a conversation with you or myself. Nick's prime on that side of things. Key areas that we are covering as well, just to give a wider sort of remit, is we are quite big on the neurodivergent side of things. So I'm studying that at university at the moment. Jodie's sort of my partner in crime on that side of things as well. That's the best way of describing it. We are running a suicide prevention week in August, but it's an outdoor adventure training week for veterans. And part way through that week on the Wednesday, we're going to be running the conference, which I'll give you guys a shout about. So you're more than welcome to come down to. It's the 19th of August. And then what Martin's mentioned earlier, we're starting to roll out our veteran identification support program, which was sponsored by Sussex Police and Crime Commissioners. And that's basically a program to train civilians to understand how how veterans think, work, whatever else, gets them in that mindset. So when they are approached by a veteran in an organisation, they can actually get a qualification and understanding us to some sort of degree. But yeah, Jodie,
I've
go.
just got one more question, if possible.
Yeah.
You said about neurodiverse. Since leaving, have been diagnosed with ADHD. And you were
Welcome to the club.
And do you know what?
Good company.
Taking that medication has really settled me. Transition with somebody. And also, I have people point out to me that I'm a bit autistic. And I'm like, oh, well, I kind of accept that condition now.
Superpower, mate.
Really happy with who I am. But the question is, do you feel, or do you think, or do you know, if people within the military are typical ADHD or autistic, i.e., they're the kind of people that go towards that adrenaline?
Massive amount.
Absolutely.
Massive amount of neurodivergence. I was at the Dyslexia Defence Network with Kirk Thomas last week. Brilliant guy, doing a brilliant job. They've got over 4,000 members. That tells you something. And here's a classic. We make you laugh. All the Special Forces guys I know are all neurodiverse. So they're all very special guys.
They all bring something to the team, right?
They do. Yeah. It's an absolute superpower. I would absolutely tell you, hand over fist, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing if I wasn't. I got diagnosed at 50 with ADHD, and it explains so much to me. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing, and I just think, it's made my life so much better, to be honest. And Jodie, Jodie and I are like peas in a pod. It's
my friendships, my relationship, everything. Yeah. Like more focused, more dedicated. I love life a lot more. So thank you for answering that question.
They absolutely should put it on as a prerequisite if you want to join the military. Are you autistic or do you have ADHD? Then we'll take you. Would make life a lot simpler.
The irony is the irony is they won't let you in because you are, but 99% of them probably are already. And
I love the t-shirt. I absolutely love it.
Of the t-shirt.
Adam, just going to ask Adam. Adam, do you have any questions for the team?
Yeah, I was just going to say, when I left in '84, late '84, how can I say, it was rather a lonely sort of feeling. I don't think at the time there was a sort of the Army Welfare Association had the sort of help that you got today. But, at Southampton Dock in May, when they came back from Falklands, there was horrific injuries there. I saw some amputations, feet off, and no one knows. I often wonder where those guys are today, and horrific injuries I'm talking about. And for me, it was a very lonely feeling. And the other day I went down to Colchester Garrison, where I was for a while in Essex, and a lot of it's been locked down. And it was kind of a sad feeling because I was there for a while, and no one can take the memories, but it brought back the memories of the early '80s, and it was kind of a lonely sort of feeling, because I'm not in touch with anyone today. There was about 3 years ago, I was in Ilford, and a guy shouted, "I know you used to be in the Army." My friend Pat, I hadn't seen him for about 35 years, and then I just lost contact with him. But that buddy thing, moral support, peer support is very, very important, I think, what you're doing. But for me, when I see a disused army barracks where I was 40 years ago now, the parties we had there and the people I knew, it's a sadness that I still have. It's a sadness. I wouldn't say it's PTSD, but it brings back feelings of sadness.
Can I just add in one thing that you mentioned earlier about helping veterans? Everything I've seen now, I'm in the third sector social entrepreneur side of things, as I keep being told, which is quite interesting. Trying to get my head around that a bit. The vast majority of veteran organisations that are actually making a difference are run by veterans. That speaks volumes, doesn't it? So,
yeah, totally. I believe, and I truly believe, swear by it. Veterans will speak to veterans. That's it. If I've got a problem, I ain't going to go and speak to anybody. If I see an individual, like a psychologist, a psychiatrist, or a doctor, and they've done service, and also I believe ADHD people stick with ADHD people, so therefore veterans, right?
I also find that some veterans are too proud as well. When I was in Bath, I was trying to help a homeless veteran, and he just wasn't interested. And so what I tend to do, the best way I find to deal with them, if they're homeless on the street, just go up, leave them some food, write your name on it, and they'll take it, and then go back, do it again, and then once you've done it a couple of times, they start engaging with you. Some veterans are too proud to ask. Obviously, as you know, we're here to help.
Yeah. Well, that's part of the VIST program as well. It's to try and break them barriers down.
Yeah, go on, Jodie.
I'm just going to backtrack a couple of conversations ago. That lovely person that put up, how can their public help? I would definitely say if you can refer people, we want to know where people are. We're not hearing enough about where people are. So if you know somebody that needs help, like you were just saying, how you actually access that person, how you process that person, and get that person, if you can, somehow get them to see that we're not trying to investigate, interfere, or infiltrate their life. That what they get from it is what they want, not what we want.
I know of an individual right now, a veteran that's up in Scotland, doing the Northborough 500, living in a van. If he's living in a van for 4 years, he does not want to engage with us. He's living his best life. He's got ADHD. Yeah. He's absolutely just flying around doing everything, but he's living his life. Yeah. So actually, he's doing okay. So.
And you know what, this is what this show's about. It's about networking and getting other companies on, and other CICs on, other charities on, and getting the message out there. We've been quite lucky. We've only been going 2.5 years to get as big as we've got, being approved by the Armed Forces Covenant and in partnership with the Veterans World magazine. We're in the magazine every single time. We've got 4 pages. So what I'd like to offer you guys is 2 pages of Veterans World magazine on the next release. If you can write a 2-page release, we'll put that in there for you, no charge, and that's what we can do for you guys.
1 sec. Yeah.
Thank you. Can I ask Adam a quick question?
Right? Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, go for it. Ask
Adam a quick question. Adam, how does Late Night Veterans Show actually help you with feeling less lonely? Does it help at all?
It was great, an honour to be part of it. How can I say? Because it was I was only in it for 3 years, and it was 3 years that I was in my teens, 19 when I joined, and how can I say? But it was a big part of my life. And how can I say, as for personal mental health issues, I think we all, at some time in life, we're all going to have a legal issue or a mental health issue or such and such. Mine, I think, comes from working night duty over the years in jail and in hospitals. Night duty, I think, can give you PT. It upsets the biorhythms in the body. I wouldn't advise anyone.
Isolating as well.
Isolating. It's damaged my relationships. I was in love with someone 35 years ago, and it alters your mood. And no matter what you do when you do night duty, particularly in jail where you have to touch the wall every half an hour to prove you're awake, you don't want an Epstein situation, you know. You've got this, but you know, excuse my French, but it's fucked up my relationships completely doing night duty. I wouldn't advise anyone to do night duty. The army. I remember when we were on exercise, the person we didn't like, we always gave them sentry duty about 3 and 4 in the morning. You know, we gave that to the ones we didn't like, and but it was only for an hour. You know, when I'm night duty, it's not good for the body, and I say it's ruined my relationships. And if I saw her today, I'd just like to say I'm sorry, but I know what caused it. That and a mixture of alcohol as well damaged my relationship. Night duty, the army was good, because in the army, when we were doing it, we when we were relaxed, we were relaxed, you know. And
So
when I was doing drill, sorry,
they say the best thing for an ADHD burnout, the 20-minute nap, right? That's what you need to do. You need to sleep. If you're working at night, your sleep is completely off the sleep.
Yeah, because they gave us a book in the army. I don't know whether they gave it to you, but I was in much earlier. But it was called a little book called Basic Battle Skills, and in there it talked about, there was one chapter on the importance of sleep, that it repairs body tissue, and it said that sleep is so important. After a while, you start to hallucinate, and when you are hallucinating, that is basically you dreaming when you're awake. You know, so the Basic Battle Skills was a marvelous little book. I don't know if you can get it today, but they gave it to us when I was at Catterick Garrison in 1981. But being with you guys today is just great to offer some help. No man's an island. No man's an island, Jodie, you know. Or woman.
Thanks for answering that so candidly.
Yeah, that's thank you very much for that, everyone, guys. So what I'm going to do now is going to pass you back to Darren. Darren's going to take over lead now, so I'll just pass you on to Darren. There you go.
So, guys, we're coming up to the 45-minute mark. Before I hand it over to Adam, he does his thing once every couple of weeks, which is absolutely brilliant. People are really interested. So what we do is we do the first part of the show with you guys, then Adam does the second part of the show. Do you guys have anything else you want to add in? Or Adam, do you have any questions for these guys? Yeah, Dean, I've seen you raise your hand there.
Yeah, so our aim is to be national. And we are having conversations internationally as well. So your connections abroad, we're not going to go that far yet, but I definitely had a conversation with Vet Life in the US, and I'm talking to somebody out in Canada, and I'm also talking to somebody out in Australia for similar things. They've got exactly the same problems, and they need the same solutions. So with your World Magazine, we're definitely worth having a conversation with that, but I'll reach out to you on that one.
Yeah, so like we said, we have 4 pages on it, and every issue. We're happy to give you 2 pages on the next one to promote Squaddie Box. We'll promote it on our website. We'll help you the best we can. It's all about networking, and that's what it's all about, is networking. As long as veterans are being helped, it doesn't matter who's helping them. That's as far as I'm concerned. So basically, guys, this is Squaddie Box's website below. I'm just going to put it up on the screen. Please take a look at it. Please take a look at Squaddie Box. I'm going to invite him again on the show every 3 months to get an update. As you can see, the website's there, squaddiebox.org.uk. Also, this is our email address if anybody would like to get in touch with us. And the Veterans World Magazine. Please take a look at the World Veterans Magazine. We are now in partnership with them, and we have 4 pages in there all about us. So please do take a look. Squaddie Box team, Jodie, Dean, is it Martin and Nick? Is that correct? Hey, I got it right. Thank you so much for coming on to the Late Night Veteran Show. It's an absolute pleasure, guys. If you guys wouldn't mind coming off the show, and we'll get Adam on. Absolute pleasure. Dean, I will give you a ring tomorrow and find out more information. Gareth?
Thank you, guys. I just want to say thank you very much for what you're doing. Obviously, I am living proof that you can't get out of the military. You can't have to take that support. Reach out to the charities. Thank you very much for what you're doing. You know what? All it took for me was someone say, "Do you want a cup of tea?" And that was the best. Just go. I was in front of someone, my life in order. So thank you very much for what you're doing. Keep doing what you're doing. We're going to keep doing what we can.
Carry on, guys.
That goes for me as well. I mean, as you say, the vicious circle of needing an address to get a job, and then a job to get an address is a vicious circle, and that is one of the worst things to overcome, because these days with all these DBS checks and all that, they want to know everything about your life, so it's even worse, you know. So it's a big hurdle to get over. Yeah, you guys are doing a great job.
Bridging the gap. That's what we're doing. We're bridging the gap.
So, guys, I'm going to
Thank you, guys.
That's an excellent point, because if you've got gaps in your address, when they do your BS 7858 and things like that, or your check to be a licensee, all the rest of it, it gives problems. But if you've got that address, you could be moving around significantly, but you've got a single address. So that helps you from being singled out as not
a problem,
or singled out as being a problem, because now you've got the address. There's no reason why there's any gaps in employment things.
Indeed.
Right, well,
guys, thank you. What I'll do is just go around everybody. So Jodie, is there anything else you want to add before we end the call? I'll go around everybody.
No, thank you for having me.
Yeah, well done, Jodie. Yeah.
Absolutely perfect.
Cheers, Jodie. Thank you, mate.
Thank you. And then, and we go for Nick. Yeah.
Cheers, Nick.
I'll unmute before I say no. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Nick.
Cheers, Nick. It's a pleasure. Thank you, mate.
And we got the CEO, obviously, and the guy next to him as well. So.
Yeah, and my baby. Yeah.
Dean, can I just say thank you so much for getting in contact with us? It's been an absolutely great show. We've had plenty of people tuned in, plenty of shares. We're over 125 shares now already between YouTube and Facebook. So the numbers will go up over time. I've got to upload it to Instagram and TikTok. But thank you. Any last words, Dean? Mine?
No, just
Cheers, Daz. Cheers, Gareth.
We'll keep doing what we're doing. All the support you can get. Networking is the biggest thing for us. It's really helpful. But
100%. Like I said, we're always here to help, and we will give you a 2-page in the Veterans World magazine.
Yeah, please, please give us a little split.
My dog Ellie says bye-bye as well. So, yeah.
Cheers, mate.
Thank you very much.
Cheers, bye.
Adam, as always, brilliant. We're a brilliant host on the show. And over the past couple of weeks of jumping on, Adam, people have been asking about you and your little talks. Right. So, like, I really like you coming on, because we do the chat. We have our guests on, and then we have the talk of a different section each time of what you want to talk about, which is absolutely great. So, Adam, I'm going to hand it over to you. Put you on the big screen. I'm going to be doing the controls in the background. I will be listening in. Over to you, Adam.
Yeah, thanks very much for that, Darren and Gareth. You're doing a great job, and wonderful people. Pleasure to be amongst you all. And as I say, about 3 weeks ago, I did a talk, a first part of this talk on sensory deprivation, what it is, how to cope with it. And I thought I'd do the second part tonight. As we're talking about with PTSD and sensory deprivation, all of these things, all of these psychiatric conditions are linked, and they're all stress related. And as we know, during the lockdowns, you don't have to be a soldier doing interrogation training to experience sensory deprivation, because we were locked in, and that also had an adverse effect on people's demeanour and people's behaviour. So I was going to talk about this. The second part of this talks about sensory deprivation. Sensory deprivation isn't necessarily a negative thing if it's done short term. It can be relaxing and conducive to health, i.e. meditation. But however, extended or forced sensory deprivation can result in extreme anxiety, hallucinations, bizarre thoughts, temporary senselessness, paranoia, and ultimately depression. And depression has been described as a form of internal anger. You're angry, but you're angry with yourself. Some of you may have seen the film Papillon, made in the 70s with Steve McQueen and Dustin Hoffman, where they underwent, I think, first of all, a 2-year sensory deprivation sentence in total darkness, and also then a 5-year one after that, which I don't think is possible. I think you'd have a psychological death. But they did do that. And the whole thing about this is, having worked in prison and over the years, and having worked with forensic patients, how can I say, when you're locked up, it's not just a punitive thing where when you're locked up, you are also being potentially damaged psychologically, because most of the prisoners I've worked with over the years, when they've come out of prison, the longer they've done, basically the more psychotherapy they have required. So this is why in jails we do association in the afternoon, which is normally 1 hour in the afternoon watching the BBC. I mean, God help us, more like a form of punishment, you might think to yourself. So, as I say, with the so-called lockdowns, which we all experienced, or ever without exception, many of us are experiencing some form of sensory deprivation. There are varying degrees of sensory deprivation emanating from sudden loss, isolation, to the more extreme, i.e. solitary confinement, which I mentioned in the film Papillon. The condition has devastating adverse effects on one's demeanour and functioning. It is an overwhelming condition that will ultimately lead to depression, self-harm, domestic violence, and suicidal ideation as a way out. And if there's any questions anyone wants to ask, if something's not clear, or if I seem confused myself, please interrupt me, no problem. So, as I say, the British government introduced lockdowns during the pandemic, which was, I think, one of the most frightening things about that was you didn't know how long it was going to go on for. In a way, it was a bit compared to my granddad, who was banged up in Germany for 6 years in World War II. He said one of the most terrifying things about it was you didn't know when the war was going to come to an end. And the situation was further reinforced during the lockdowns by the paranoia introduced by the state, instructing the police to reinforce sensory deprivation by enforcing house arrests. I think it's very easy to forget about how frightening it was during the lockdowns, and which is why a lot of people complied. And the mere resistance, of which I was involved with, was met with police brutality. I mean, if Piers Corbyn comes on there in a couple of weeks, he'll tell you more about that, because he was part of it from the very beginning. And this is not conspiracy, but the government did use a Mindspace thing, which is they used the behavioural insights team in the negative use of applied behavioural psychology to get you to do certain things with your body, which you wouldn't normally do. So with sensory deprivation, it's vital that you individually realise the effects of it, what is happening to you, how the process manifests, reinforces, and ultimately how to escape it. So what happens to the human brain when it lacks stimuli? And I recommend a very good book to read. When I did my nursing degree, this was in the hospital, so it's called Inside the Black Room, which is about the experiments and they did at McGill University in Canada in the 1960s. It was a voluntary thing where people subject themselves to total monotony, utter monotony, for 2 or 3 weeks. It was undergone a lot of watching because they didn't know the effects of this. And contrary to what they believed, they thought it would be a stimulating mental exercise. It wasn't. After a while, when they were in these bags and boxes, they didn't know whether they were upside down, standing up, or whatever. So the whole thing proves that stimulus isn't just important, but stimulus is also vital, because this is why we need holidays. And there was an English neurologist there who said the same thing. So when your brain lacks stimuli, it has effects on the passage of time, effects of continual darkness. You're more susceptible to propaganda and endurance during low stimulus conditions. The soldiers, some people watching this, soldiers may have undergone interrogation training, and they're taught about the effects of some of the effects of sensory deprivation in order to maintain a sense of stability, orientation, and survival. So but we, during the lockdowns, we had no such luxury, and many people deprived of normality and stimuli were suffering in silence, mistakenly believing they were responding abnormally to adverse conditions. This in itself can allow this situation to escalate. You might remember during the early part of the pandemic, people were talking about the new normal, that term new normal, which is kind of terrifying in itself, because you're thinking, who wrote the rules here? Where did this come from, this new normal? And there is only one normal, and that is normality. You know, if a guy walks down King's Road with a potato on his head, he's abnormal until everyone starts to do it, you know. So they stopped using it because I think people were realizing what was happening. So previous studies in sensory deprivation have been conducted by willing volunteers, as I said, inside the Black Room, very good book to read, who could leave at any time. The predicament of people during the lockdowns was much worse, in as much we had no choice in the matter, and we were effectively under psychological siege from our own government. If you had company with you, it's why we have it when I worked in jail. We've got some cells with 2 people to cell, some cells with 7 people to cell. The more trusted, that is stimulus in itself. So we're under siege from our own government. The condition calls on human resilience, resourcefulness, and unity to escape symptoms and to maintain some semblance of purpose, self, and orientation. That orientation is very, very important. So during the pandemic, I was advising people daily on Facebook and elsewhere how to cope under these terrible conditions. And I believe my help may have prevented or at least delayed some suicides and self-harm. And I think, you don't know where this is going. It may need help at some stage in the future. So soldiers and military and sensory deprivation, as I say, some people watching this have undergone interrogation training, which involves every stressor, including sleep deprivation. And just now we talked about doing night duty, which damages the biorhythms. You never really catch up on your sleep. And there's a big study in Cambridge at the moment going into the link between depression and sleep deprivation. They are inextricably linked, because when you are very, very tired, your body is telling your mind to do things that it can no longer cope with, and as a result you get depressed. And it's also what's known as in psychology as psychomotor retardation. When you suffer with psychomotor retardation, everything will be much slower, and that goes with depression. You see someone who's depressed, very, very slow, and you might say to them, "How are you?" They'll say, "Oh, well, I'm great, I'm feeling great," but this is incongruity of effect. They're not feeling great, they're looking awful. So these stressors, when you do interrogation training, is all to break you, basically. My course, was to break us, and because in wartime conditions things are pretty awful. That's the psychology behind it, and I realise that. So when you put any animal under increasing stress, it will always have take its coping mechanisms to the absolute limit, often to a point where the victim exhibits irrational behaviour out of character to their norms. This sometimes leads sufferers to believe the experience symptoms known as I say, PTSD or complex PTSD, which is one even worse. You've got ones which aren't quite so bad as that. One of them is called adjustment disorder and severe adjustment disorder, but you do tend to get over them in psychiatric terminology. With sensory deprivation, in most cases, victims will be unaware of what effects the extreme stress is having on them. A common denominator is symptoms will vary between individuals. We've all got our own idiosyncrasies. Some people can cope with stress better than others. So coping with sensory deprivation and extreme stress, because I say they are linked. One is be aware of the immediate impact of the stressor. Distance yourself from any stressful environment. And that's good if you're finishing up a relationship, keep away from her or him, whatever the case may be, because every time you take yourself back to them, you take yourself back to the point of conflict. So that's a good way to distance yourself from the stressful environment. Over-analysis of the stressful situation may increase stress levels. Therefore, be aware of overstepping the mark. The overwhelming stress will prevent any meaningful analysis. Hence, concentrate on getting away from the stressors, as I say again. See, an incredible irony with the PSYOPs used during the pandemic was that collaborators, and I use the term very loosely, collaborators as people who went along with it, I wasn't one of them, by the way, were willing to comply with the psychological assault. And I think that's what it was. It was a psychological assault. It was negative use of, and it was used from the behavioural insights team. This is no conspiracy. People went along with it, and did so in order to make lives easier for themselves, ironically. And how many times did you hear the rant from masked people, we're having jabs to take our freedoms back? I mean, I went to the polling booth during the lockdowns and spoke to a lady, and she was done up like an Eskimo, and she'd had 3 of those jabs, and she said, I'm doing this to get my freedom back. And so I said, well, hold on a minute, the jabs can't be working if you have to walk around dressed up like an Eskimo with a goldfish bowl on your head. And she wasn't far off that, a goldfish bowl on your head with tin foil around your neck as well. Some people were put into that mental state, let alone walking around in city circles in supermarkets, thinking that you might duck from the viruses and all this. All this, in my opinion, was an inducement of mental illness. So yeah, some poor victims were saying we're having jabs to get our freedom back. And such one-dimensional, myopic thinking about compliance with tyranny did anything but set them free, because we had more of it. And I'm proud to be part of the demos where there must have been millions of people there. There was the Global Veterans Association there, and the police did back down while everyone else was waiting to get their vaccines. Not a vaccine, by the way. We were on the street, and a week later, it's a talk for a week later, they released everything. There was no more lockdowns. So, as I say, this myopic thinking, and I can understand why people did it. Alas, the 15,000, people are now going for vaccine damage. I won't go into that too much. And there's cases in the High Court. There's a number of cases around the world. The point I'm stressing here is collaboration with tyranny cannot benefit you. It won't release you from the tyranny or aid anyone but those pushing the psychological operations. And I used to listen a lot to Dr. John Lee, who's an epidemiologist, a virologist, and a great man. He used to be on that show with Professor Gunn Hergens called Body World, the plastication. And I don't know what's happened to John Lee lately, but he used the term psyops. And then I realised, yes, it's us against the state. And I didn't know where this was going to go. So as I say, in the 1950s, going back to this book again, university researchers in Montreal in Canada volunteered and put themselves in tiny rooms and to deprive themselves of sensory input. The results were shocking. And Donald O. Hebb, who was a professor of psychology at Montreal's McGill University, which is where the experiments took place, set out to study how sensory isolation affects human cognition. The results were terrifying, including the likely shrinking of brain cell tissues. So it has a physical dimension as well. My own personal experience of sensory deprivation, some years ago, I was given the job for a few days of looking after what they call special in a former IRA prisoner. And strange enough, he didn't mind the fact that I'd been a former soldier, and we got on quite well together. And we had a conversation. So he told me that he regretted killing people. And I think he killed about 5 Protestants. I don't know what happened to this guy, but I do remember when I took him for a walk, he was very, very highly susceptible to bright colours. He was he'd been in H Block in Ireland for so long, I think about 15 years. He'd never seen these bright colours, and he found it kind of shocking. So because the prison environment took himself away from his natural habitat. Getting on a bit to Mindspace, which was the British government way of using applied behavioural psychology. They did it using paranoia, fear. You may not agree with everything I'm saying, and also a lot of propaganda as well. Every echelon of government policy was being manipulated by psychological bodies such as Mindspace and the Behavioural Insights team to get you to alter your behaviour. And a lot of people, I think there's signs of people seeing what is going on in now when I speak to people that are getting ill from these so-called vaccines. As I say, it's a topic for another day. When Piers comes on, maybe we can talk about that further. So just to reiterate, it's vital that we realise the effects of sensory deprivation, what is happening to us, how the process manifests, reinforces, and how to escape it. Let me just go down a bit. Yeah, as I say, sensory deprivation during COVID was causing social isolation on a massive scale, not witnessed in history. To exacerbate the problem, social distancing, aka social isolation, It's a kind of oxymoron, that, because if you're social distancing, you're not being social at all. You're distancing yourself from being social. Otherwise known as social isolation, was being promoted as normal by the UK government, which is the World Economic Forum, which is a globalist body, has permeated governments around the world, including our own. And it's not a conspiracy. As you can remember, when Keir Starmer came to power, he was asked, is Davos, where the World Economic Forum is held every year, is that more important than Westminster? He says yes, without any hesitation whatsoever. So it's not a conspiracy. Conspiracies, these are facts. So there was no recognition of sensory deprivation being a rationale for healthy living. And as I say, the oxymoron is that term social distancing. It was self-contradictory. The term also deviated from normal practices of psychology and psychiatry in terms of health. Acceptance of the term social distancing was therefore in itself self-perpetuating and accelerating in the development of mental illness. Basically, the World Economic Forum state globalists successfully normalized isolation. And as I say, if you live with someone, with people, I was going on demos every day, so it didn't affect me. But if you were living alone, I mean, that's where people felt it most. You were in an extremely volatile situation. So here's a few paragraphs on sensory deprivation, what it is, the negative longer term effects on mental health and how to avoid it. Let me just move down here. Okay. So what conditions allow sensory deprivation to develop? One is isolation following bereavement. They reckon the bereavement process may take about 7 years. Secondly, long prison sentences and other forms of deprivation of liberty. Long periods alone, often referred to as cabin fever. You may have seen that film, The Shining, with Jack Nicholson, where he went insane. And there was another movie some years ago with Alan Bates where he was on an island full of penguins. It wasn't the Falkland Islands, but he started to go insane. As I say, the COVID crisis led to sensory deprivation, and also with depression and sensory deprivation, you also sometimes get dark rumination and derealization. Derealization is where you lose contact with reality. Censorship and sensory deprivation, these two are inextricably linked. Censorship stifles one's means at using one or more of their sensory mechanisms to analyze the situation they're in. Censorship, therefore, played a big part in promoting sensory deprivation. Censorship is a whole subject in itself, one I like, preventing one's autonomy. Basically, censorship is when, by proxy, you give your rights to someone else to see what is right and wrong for you. It's just talk for another day. All this, again, in the guise of the supercilious protecting you. The amount of times they use the word protecting you from yourself, basically. I mean, this Ofcom at the moment, who I found out during this week, I did the consultation on the so-called Online Safety Act and Online Harms Act. They use the term harm in every single paragraph and safety without actually describing what they mean by the term harm, which I think speaks volumes. Desmond Morris and his book, The Naked Ape, some of you may have heard of. Desmond Morris was I think he's still around actually. He wrote a number of books he applied zoology to man and did a number of studies on man as the animal, his traits, and I recommend a very good book. I've got it downstairs. It's called The Naked Ape, Desmond Morris, and he applies zoology to man. And you'll find that in there's one chapter where he talks about anti-explorational behavior. And in anti-explorational behavior is basically where if you go to a zoo, you might have seen a chimpanzee or a lion walking round and round and round in circles trying to break the monotony. Anti-explorational behavior is basically where you try to make your restricted environment your habitat. Our natural habitat is to be out there in the green on the savannas, but in prisoners, I've often seen them walking round and round in circles, and same in the zoo, going round and round in circles. And also in that movie, I think it was called Midnight Express. They put the guy in the mental hospital, and they was walking around and round and round in circles. So that's a very important point that Desmond Morris makes in his book, The Naked Ape. He talks about man, the animal, man being the only animal on the planet that isn't naked. All other animals, even the tortoise, are naked, and it says that also has an effect on our behaviour. It's a good book to read, The Naked Ape. It was a bestseller in the 1960s. I'm going to use a case study here for this study of sensory deprivation and isolation. And my granddad did a short period of isolation in Germany. He said when he killed a rabbit in the snare during World War II, and the guard left the door open most of the time. Apparently, it was called solitary confinement. That was. But the case study I'm going to use tonight is one on Vanunu, a guy called Vanunu, who was Mordechai Vanunu. He was an Israeli nuclear whistleblower who exposed Israel's secret nuclear weapons program. He was subject to one of the longest periods of solitary confinement in modern history. And during the duration of his isolation, Vanunu spent, incredibly brave man, over 18 years in prison, with 11 of those consecutive years, brackets from his abduction in 1986 until 1988. Spent in total solitary confinement. Unbelievable. And the conditions were he was held in a 6 square meter windowless cell in the with other dangerous criminals in the unit of Ascalon and later Ayalon prisons, which I think is in Israel. He had no contact with other inmates. He was exercising alone and experiencing severely limited human interaction. And the purpose of this, if you can call it purpose, the isolation was intended to break him psychologically, which Vanunu frequently described as an attempt to make him crazy, which they really did. Amnesty International did a report on this, and they described his conditions as cruel, inhuman, and degrading treatment, which it was, because we don't do that in British prisons, not while I'm there anyway. And so sensory deprivation, extreme isolation are recognised by international human rights bodies and medical experts as forms of psychological torture. These methods aim to break a subject's will, dismantle their sense of identity, and induce extreme mental distress. During defining sensory deprivation as torture, there's another term called white torture or white room torture, which is a specialized psychological technique where a prisoner is held in completely white cells, white walls, white floor, white ceiling, with constant white artificial light. These are the extreme cruelty of sensory deprivation. The victim is fed colorless food like white rice, you better believe it, with constant white artificial light. And I think there's been some studies done on these fluorescent lamps. I think not only can they induce cancer, but it's also an artificial light, which again, you see the moth going towards it sometimes, thinking it's the norm. So again, it's not a natural thing. It's fair to say fed white rice, and the guards wear padded shoes to eliminate sound. Again, it goes back to McGill University. Disorientation techniques, methods such as hooding, blindfolding, and the use of white noise or constant loud music is another thing, which is otherwise known as sensory overload, are used to strip a person's ability to perceive time, space, and their environment. Social isolation, which is a big part of solitary confinement, which is the denial of all meaningful human contact, is often used in tandem with sensory deprivation. And as I say, the United Nations and organisations like Amnesty International considered solitary confinement exceeding 15 days to be a form of torture. Psychological and physical effects, unlike psychological torture, leaves no visible wounds, but its impact on the human psyche is often profound and long-lasting. Sometimes you never go, you don't know it's complex PTSD. As I say, as with sleep deprivation, hallucinations may follow when deprived of external stimuli. The brain attempts to create its own sensory patterns, leading to vivid visual and auditory hallucinations, often called, strange name, the prisoner's cinema. Also then follows cognitive decline due to prolonged isolation, causes severe impairments in memory, attention and executive function. Chronic stress then leads to the shrinking of the brain in the regions like the hippocampus at the back of the brain, which they say is responsible for memory. And then also you get total demeaning loss of identity. Victims often then report losing their sense of self, becoming unable to remember faces of loved ones or differentiate between dreams and reality. This is what's known as psychotic breaks, or the DDT state, which is debility, dependency and dread. Can lead to total mental collapse and paranoia with suicidal ideation. And just to reiterate the legal state of this again, the United Nations Committee Against Torture explicitly considers sensory deprivation such as blindfolding or hooding to be a violation of the Convention Against Torture, as is stated in the European Court of Human Rights. While initially ruling that some sensory techniques, these 5 techniques were inhuman and degrading treatment rather than torture, it's since been ruled that complete sensory isolation coupled with total social isolation constitutes a am I okay, Darren? Am I okay for a little bit longer?
Yeah, all good. Another 14 minutes, mate. Yeah,
I'll be finished by then.
I accidentally put the camera back on. We're just about to pick up an electric bike to go back to the room.
Right.
That was
okay.
Yeah, carry on, mate.
50 minutes will be done. Yeah. As I say, the United Nations has since ruled that complete sensory isolation coupled with total social isolation constitutes a violation of fundamental human rights. Nelson Mandela rules, it was otherwise known as, the United Nations standard minimum rules for the treatment of prisoners prohibit indefinite and prolonged use of sensory confinement. Because as I say, prisoners, it's not just a punitive thing. Prisoners are also damaged by the process, the extreme shock of being left alone for so long and the amount of time you're left alone for. I mean, I say my grandfather was in Germany and Poland for 6 years. He was playing cricket. They had a lot of social contact with other prisoners, so it wasn't so bad. So psychotherapy for survivors of solitary confinement requires a specialized trauma-induced approach that addresses deep isolation, PTSD and severe anxiety. I'm nearly done now. Effective treatment focuses on rebuilding social connection, establishing safety, restoring agency and managing sensory sensitivities. Traditional passive talk therapy can sometimes replicate the feeling of confinement, making active relational therapy more effective. Where are we? Therapies must address the severe symptoms like hallucinations, paranoia and memory issues, often treating them as injuries from torture rather than just a mental illness. Rebuilding human connection. Therapy also involves connecting with one human being to another to combat the effects of extreme isolation. Active engagement survivors often benefit from walking and talking therapy or other active methods rather than sitting in a quiet room, which can trigger feelings of being confined again. What's known as restoring agency therapy helps individuals regain a sense of control over their lives and decisions, which is taken away from them during the period of isolation. Getting on to peer support, I'm nearly done there. Peer support from others who have lived through similar isolation is invaluable to the healing process. Common therapeutic approaches is supportive psychotherapy, focusing on safety, stability and coping mechanisms, particularly preventing suicide, restorative circles, group therapy, and also programs designed to provide a safe space to process trauma in the community. CBT, cognitive behavioural therapy, is often modified to address PTSD symptoms associated with confinement, and it challenges the considerations, what's it called, replication of confinement. The traditional quiet room, I don't want to go into that. Symptom management, addressing intense anxiety, panic attacks and hypersensitivity that persist in long after release. As I say, it doesn't stop there, it can come back. This is why people who've experienced flashbacks after a car accident, it can come back at any time. I remember my grandfather years later, 40 years after he was banged up, 4 o'clock in the morning, we'd be in a hotel or a hostel somewhere. You'd hear that Lausch, Lausch, Schnell, Schnell. He started talking in German because he was having flashbacks when he was in his subconscious. So trust building is important. Developing trust with the therapist can be difficult, but after prolonged and forced isolation. Other ways to prevent sensory deprivation. Lead a structured day, always important. Vary your environment. Goes back to the McGill University thing, having different forms of stimulus. I'm sure Darren's getting plenty of them in Germany and on the Brecon Beacons recently. 3, do not compromise your health by considering extreme social isolation normal, or the government buzzword new normal, which is they tried to use, to say this is normal. It wasn't normal, and we'll discuss that on another day. Doing so is detrimental to, and also a self-fulfilling prophecy. A self-fulfilling prophecy means that little Johnny comes to work, no one's talking to him, eventually no one else talks to him, eventually he's a bit odd. That's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Consider your various aspects of need, i.e. your physical, social and environmental requirements and how to attain them, if it's all possible. 6, daily exercise is also very, very important, prevents psychological frustration and is also known to boost endorphins, making you feel happier. Healthy daily activities conducing to helping you sleep better at night. If you've suffered with insomnia like I have over the years, this I think is due to working nights over the years. 7, do anything within practicality that allows you to feel better about yourself, reward yourself. Avoid ruminating and dwelling on current problems that you may have that may bring back stress, particularly if it lowers your mood. And finally, maintain social contacts, which is what we've been discussing tonight with other people. And remember, one of the best feelings you can have in life is never to feel alone. So that's just a little talk on sensory deprivation, what it is. As I say, it's not just prisoners that have experienced it. Over the last 5 years, we've all experienced it to some degree or another. And many of the people who I saw on the anti-lockdown protests said that if they hadn't have gone on those protests, they would have gone insane. And it's the government. No one is going to tell me, I'd have to be really, really naive that the government didn't know what they were doing. But as I say, you've probably all got your own views on this, and it's a subject for another day when Piers is around. An extremely brave man, a soldier in his own right. We can talk about this further. And that's the end of it tonight. So Darren, if you want to come and whenever you're ready, we can sign off for tonight. But it was a pleasure doing these courses. They are deep, intense subjects, but I think they have to be spoken about. So I hope that was okay, Darren. Yeah. Yeah, you look like you're having a great time out there in Germany, Berlin. No sensory deprivation for you tonight, that's for sure.
I know, I'm trying to get this off now. I'm going to pull it off.
Yeah, you look like you're down under at the moment.
Just bear with me, guys. I'm upside down.
Yeah.
Oh, I've frozen with it. Oh. Right, okay, guys. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Please like, share, and subscribe. I'm Darren, your host of the show. Gareth, your co-host. And as always, Adam Scarborough, co-host. He's doing absolutely brilliant. This is the Late Night Veteran Show, episode 78. Squaddie Box is on. Don't forget to tune into them and have a look at their website. Adam, any last words?
Yeah, just say thanks again, Darren and Gareth. Great to see you both again for the opportunity to do this. I tried not to make it too highfalutin, but I think it's an interesting subject and one that's been relevant. That's why I did it. Thank you for the
Adam,
opportunity.
thank you very much. We have been listening whilst we've been trying to transition across Berlin. We are currently on a scooter. We're going to go.
I hope it wasn't too monotonous. No,
it's great because it's like at the end of the day, it's like all that sort of like burnout and all that isolation absolutely has an impact on it. So,
yeah, absolutely. Social isolation is not good. Yeah, indeed.
We can all reminisce with it. So yeah, we're going to go and enjoy a nice a gross beer.
Yeah, a nice beer.
Fantastic. Have one for me.
Say good night in German.
Good night to everyone.
Good night.
And,
Good enough. This is the Late Night
Good night.
Veteran Show, episode 78. Yours truly, Darren, Gareth, and Adam Scarborough. Good night, guys.
See you next time, guys.
On the screen.